All right, welcome back. We're going to discuss here the Senate. The Senate is the other house of the legislature. The two chambers, the House and the Senate. This one is the Senate. People from the Senate are called senators. People from the House of Representatives are called representatives. So make sure you know that difference too. Little bit of trivia as I looked up. I did look up how many representatives there are. There's one representative for every about 700,000 people. It's a little bit more than that. It's like actually 703. So the Constitution said at least, or you can't have any more than one representative for 30,000, but now it's one representative for 700,000 people. So when they take the census now, they count for every 700,000 people your state has, it gets another representative. All right, let me erase that. Let's move back over here. The Senate is the other house, or the other chamber of the legislature. Now this one is 2 senators from each state. So it doesn't matter how big or small your state is, you get 2 votes, 2 senators, which means there's always an even number. Right now, how many are there? Well, if there's 50 states and each one has 2, there's 100 senators. Now, the senators are chosen by the legislatures of the state. But wait, no, they aren't, Mr. Duffin. We vote for them. You're right. The original Constitution said that senators should be chosen by the state legislatures. But it was changed here, as you can see, by the 17th Amendment. Now, why was that? Now, the Senate was not designed to be close to the people. It was designed to be close to each state, so it would take care of the states concerned. So they wanted the state legislatures to choose the senators. That means, like, if you lived in Utah, which most of you do, your Utah state legislature would get together and choose which senators they wanted. Man, there's an abundance of bells going on here. But they would choose which senators they wanted. Now, the people said, that's not fair, we should choose our own senators, and so that was later changed by the 17th Amendment. But there's a lot of people who said that there was some wisdom in that, and the wisdom was that these people would watch out for the state's rights. They would know what's going on in the state, so that they could really take care of the state's rights that were going on. So, but that's been changed. We actually vote for our senators now, but that was the 17th Amendment that changed that. They are elected every 6 years. So let's put down some of the characteristics here. They're elected for 6 years, so they don't change as much. They're meant to stay around, and each senator has 1 vote. Let's see. So then this next one is kind of a startup clause. I'll put that bracket on it. Immediately after they shall be assembled in consequence of the first election, they shall be divided equally as may be into 3 classes. The seats of the senators of the first class shall be vacated at the expiration of the 2nd year, the second class at the expiration of the 4th year, and of the third class at the expiration of the 6th year, so that 1/3 may be chosen every 2nd year. So since they didn't want all the senators being voted on every 6 years, they actually wanted to spread it out. So they said the first very senators, some of them will be only last 2 years, some of them will last 4, and some of them will last 6, so that the voting overlaps. Hopefully that makes sense. So that every 2 years, do you like my little drawing? That's a really crummy drawing, but hopefully that helped. Every 2 years, some of the senators are chosen, but not all of them. So some years it corresponds with a presidential election, sometimes it doesn't. So the Senate is always changing, but not completely changing. Every 2 years, some of them are chosen, but some of them stay around. And then if vacancies happen by resignation or otherwise during the recess of the legislature of any state, the executive thereof may make temporary appointments until the next meeting of the legislature, which shall fill the vacancies. Now, since legislatures don't choose it anymore, that was also changed by the 17th Amendment, which we'll read in one of the other lessons. We'll read the amendments. But let's go on. The qualifications, too. No person shall be a senator who will not attain the age of 35. So they have to be 35 years old. That's 10 years older than a representative. And been 9 years a citizen. So that's 2 more years than a representative. And shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of the state. So they still have to be a resident of the state, which shall be chosen. Now, the Vice President of the United States shall be the President of the Senate. So the Vice President of the United States shall be the President of the Senate, but shall have no vote unless they be equally divided. So if there's a tie, so I'm going to put this down here. The Vice President of the United States breaks ties. Now remember, there's always an even number of senators. There's always, since there's 2 from each state. So there's always the possibility of the tie. So the Vice President of the United States shall be the President of the Senate. So he runs the Senate, but he doesn't get to vote unless there's a tie. Again, Senate shall choose their officers and presidents, or President pro tempore in the absence of the Vice President. So they choose somebody. If the Vice President isn't there, they can choose somebody else to run it. Or when he shall exercise the office of the President of the United States. So if the Vice President is acting like the President, they choose somebody else to be the President for a while. The Senate shall have the sole power, let me move things up here so I can write more of your notes down. The Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachments. Now remember, the House creates impeachments. That's my abbreviation, crummy one, huh? But impeachment just means that they're accused of a crime. The Senate has the power to try an impeachment. When sitting for that purpose, they shall be on oath or affirmation. When the President of the United States is tried, so if it's the President that's impeached, the Chief Justice shall preside. And we'll talk about who the Chief Justice is. The Chief Justice shall preside, and no person shall be convicted without a concurrence of 2/3 of the members present. So if to convict somebody, they have to have a 2/3 vote to convict somebody of impeachment. Judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than the removal of office. So the only thing that an impeachment can do is remove somebody from office and disqualify them to hold any more office. So that's all an impeachment can do. It doesn't put them in jail, doesn't give them a fine, doesn't do any of that. The only thing an impeachment can do is take them out of office and disqualify them to hold offices in the future. But the party convicted shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to the law. So even though the impeachment can only take them out of office and disqualify them from holding future office, they can still be tried in a normal court and still get normal punishments too, if what they did was a crime. So that's the Senate. So they go for 6 years. There's 2 from each. They were once elected by the legislature, but now they're elected by the people. They have to be 35 years old. They have to be 9 years a citizen, resident of the state. The Vice President breaks the ties, and he's the President. The Senate tries impeachments, and they have to convict with 2/3 of a vote. And remember that impeachments only remove people from office and disqualify them from holding future offices. Let's go on for just a couple rules here. These are kind of little rules of the Senate. When they meet, the times and places and manners of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state. So each state gets to choose how they elect their representatives and senators. But the Congress may at any time by law make laws to alter. So the Congress can change it if they don't like the way the state's doing it. They can pass a law and change it. Congress shall assemble at least once in every year, so it's constitutionally dictated that they have to assemble at least once every year. And such meeting shall be on the first Monday of December unless appointed by a different day. That was changed by the 20th Amendment, and we'll talk about that. It says when they should meet. Each house shall be the judge of elections, returns, qualifications of its own members. So they get to decide whether the elections of their own members was fair. And a majority of each house shall constitute a quorum to do business. So they have to have at least 50% present to do anything. So they can't vote unless half their people are there. So 50% of them are there. If there's less than 50%, what does it say? But a smaller number may adjourn from day to day and may be authorized to compel the attendance of absent members. So if there's people just not showing up, they can compel them in such manner and under such penalties as each house may provide. So they can pass laws for penalties for people who don't show up. If they're just trying to not show up to stop things from happening, they can do laws to say, nope, you need to show up or else. Each house may determine the rules of its proceedings, so they can determine how they're going to do things. They can punish members for disorderly behavior, however they want. And with the concurrence of 2/3, may expel a member. So they can kick someone out. If they don't like a representative and 2/3 of them vote to kick one of them out, they can kick one of them out. Each house will keep a journal of its proceedings and from time to time publish the same, except on such parts as may require secrecy. So they can keep some things secret, but otherwise they have to keep track of what they do. All the votes, the yeas and nays of the members of either house on any question shall at the desire of 1/5, so only 20% have to say, nope, we all need to know, be entered on the journal. So this is why you do have a record of how people voted. The Constitution says you do need to keep a record of how people voted. Neither the House during the session of Congress shall, without consent of the other, adjourn for more than 3 days, nor to any other place in that which the House be sitting. So they can't break up their meetings. If one House is meeting, if it's during a session of Congress, both groups have to be working. They can't have a break of more than 3 days. They can have a weekend, I guess, but not more than that. And they can't run away. They can't say, hey, we're going to hold the Senate in Hawaii. Nope, they have to stay where they are, and right now that's at the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. So they can't run away and they can't take longer breaks more than 3 days if it's during their Congress session. So there's some of the rules. Make sure, again, that you understand the Senate, the things that it can do. Make sure you understand some of these things that I put in red there. Wow, sometimes this thing just wants to get away from me. Some of the things that I put in red there, make sure you understand those notes. That's the Senate. We'll get to some of the last rules of Congress, what it can do, what powers it has coming up, and we're getting through the legislative branch of government.